Ace Frehley lowered his guitar, turned off the amplifier, and let the silence stay in front of 12,000 people. No one expected this moment. The arena was full. Madison Square Garden, October 1978. 12,000 people packed into seats that rose up into darkness, all of them there for one reason: to hear guitar solos that could shake the building's foundation. To see the Spaceman. To witness Ace Frehley do what he did better than almost anyone: play guitar like it was the only language that mattered. The show had been going for 90 minutes. Kiss was at the height of their powers. Gene Simmons had breathed fire. Paul Stanley had worked the crowd into a frenzy. Peter Criss had drummed until his hands bled. And Ace had done what he always did, stood in his corner of the stage, face hidden behind silver makeup, and played guitar solos that made grown men forget how to breathe. Everything was exactly as it should be. Until it wasn't. The band was halfway through. Shock Me, Ace's song, his moment, the solo that audiences waited for all night. The song where he took the spotlight and proved why he was more than just makeup and rocket boots. This was where Ace Frehley showed the world what he could do. The rhythm section locked in. Gene and Paul stepped back. Peter kept steady time on the drums. The stage lights focused on Ace's corner, bathing him in white light. 12,000 people leaned forward in their seats. Ace stepped to his microphone. His fingers found the strings. And then, 3 notes into the solo that thousands had paid to hear, something happened. A string broke. Not just any string. The high E. The one that carried the melody. The one that made the solo work. The sound tech in the wings saw it immediately. He grabbed a backup guitar, Ace's identical Les Paul, already tuned, already ready. He started moving toward the stage. But Ace didn't look at him. Didn't signal for the guitar. Didn't acknowledge that anything had gone wrong. Instead, Ace Frehley did something that 12,000 people would remember for the rest of their lives. He stopped playing. Not a pause. Not a dramatic moment before switching guitars. He actually stopped. He lowered his guitar slowly until it hung from his shoulder strap. He reached down to his amplifier, the massive Marshall stack that had been roaring moments before, and turned the volume knob all the way down. The music continued around him. Gene's bass. Paul's rhythm guitar. Peter's drums. But Ace's guitar went silent. And Ace just stood there. Ace didn't defend himself. He never did. The sound tech froze in the wings, backup guitar in hand, confused. The other band members kept playing, assuming Ace would signal when he was ready. The crowd started to murmur, uncertain what they were witnessing. 30 seconds passed. 45. A full minute. The other band members couldn't maintain the song without the lead guitar. One by one, they stopped playing. Gene first, his bass fading out. Then Paul's rhythm guitar. Finally Peter's drums, ending with one last cymbal that rang out into silence. Madison Square Garden, 12,000 people, one of the most famous venues in the world, went completely quiet. Ace stood in his spotlight, guitar silent at his hip, amplifier off, and did nothing. He didn't address the crowd. Didn't explain. Didn't apologize. He just stood there, breathing calmly, his face unreadable behind the silver makeup. The silence stretched. Uncomfortable. Tense. 12,000 people holding their breath, waiting for someone to do something, say something, fix whatever had just broken. But Ace didn't move. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 3 hours earlier. Ace Frehley wasn't always Ace Frehley, the spaceman, the guitar hero. Before the makeup and the rockets and the sold-out arenas, he was Paul Daniel Frehley from the Bronx, a kid who learned guitar because it was quieter than talking, who played in basement bands that never got famous, who auditioned for Kiss in 1973 wearing one red sneaker and one orange sneaker because he couldn't find a matching pair. He'd been in Kiss for 5 years now. 5 years of makeup and costumes and playing a character. 5 years of being told that the guitar was secondary to the spectacle. That the music mattered less than the fire, and the blood, and the flying. Ace had never complained. He'd put on the silver makeup every night. He'd climbed into the rocket boots. He'd done the interviews where reporters asked about the character instead of the music. He'd played the role. But 3 hours before the show, something had changed. Ace was in his dressing room, warming up on his guitar. The door was open. Down the hall, he could hear Gene and Paul doing a radio interview. The reporter's voice carried clearly. "So Gene," the reporter asked, "when people think of Kiss, they think of the spectacle, the show, the theatrics. How important is the actual musicianship?" Gene's response was immediate. "Look, we're not trying to be Led Zeppelin. We're not session musicians. The show is what matters. The guitars, the drums, that's all just part of the production. People come for the experience, not for some guitar solo." Ace's fingers stopped moving on the fretboard. The reporter continued, "What about Ace's solos? Those seem pretty technical." Paul's laugh echoed down the hallway. "Ace is a great showman. He looks incredible doing what he does. But let's be honest, you could probably get any decent studio player to record those solos. Ace's value is in the character. The Spaceman. That's what sells tickets." Ace sat very still in his dressing room. His guitar rested in his lap. He didn't move for a long time. When the road manager came to tell him it was time for the show, Ace was sitting in the same position. "You okay?" the manager asked. Ace nodded. "Fine. You sure? You seem." "I'm fine," Ace repeated. "Let's do the show." And he'd done the show. He'd put on the makeup. He'd strapped on the guitar. He'd walked onto that stage and played exactly as he always did. Until that string broke. Until he had the choice to grab the backup guitar and keep the spectacle going, or to do something else entirely. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. The silence in Madison Square Garden had lasted nearly 2 minutes now. The other band members were starting to panic. Gene took a step toward Ace, ready to ask what was wrong. Paul gestured to the wings for a technician to help. But before anyone could intervene, Ace finally moved. He reached down and picked up something from the stage floor. His broken guitar string. The hi that had snapped. He held it up in the spotlight, let it catch the light so everyone in the arena could see it dangling from his fingers. Then he dropped it. Let it fall to the stage with a tiny metallic sound that somehow carried through the silent arena. He looked out at the crowd. Still didn't speak. Just looked at them. 12,000 faces staring back at him, waiting. Then Ace did something that would define him for the rest of his career. He reached down to his amplifier and turned it back on. The Marshall stack hummed to life. He adjusted his guitar, the one with the broken string, and positioned his fingers on the fretboard. And he played. Not "Shock Me." Not the solo everyone expected. He played something else entirely, a slow, bluesy progression that used only the 5 remaining strings. No high. No melody line. Just rhythm and feeling, and the kind of playing that couldn't be faked, couldn't be replaced by any decent studio player. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't theatrical. There were no rockets, no fire, no spectacle. It was just Ace Frehley playing guitar. Really playing. Using the limitation, the broken string, to find something honest. Something real. The arena stayed silent. People stopped murmuring. They just listened. Ace played for maybe 45 seconds. A simple progression that showcased everything Gene and Paul had dismissed. The feel, the timing, the way he bent notes with his fingers instead of relying on effects, the musicianship that existed underneath the costume. When he finished, he let the final note ring out until it faded to nothing. Then he reached down and turned his amplifier off again. The silence returned. Away from the spotlight, Ace made a choice no one expected. Ace unstrapped his guitar. Not dramatically. Not with any theatricality. He just unbuckled the strap, held the guitar by the neck, and walked to the front of the stage. Gene stepped forward, whispering urgently. Ace, what are you doing? We can fix the string. We can. Ace held up one hand. Not aggressively. Just a quiet gesture that said wait. He stood at the edge of the stage, looking out at the crowd. His guitar hung from his hand, pointing toward the floor. The spotlight followed him. For the first time in 5 years of being in KISS, Ace Frehley spoke directly to an audience. Not as the Spaceman. Not reading scripted banter. Just Ace. I'm not a character, he said, his voice quiet but somehow carrying through the massive space. I'm a guitar player. The crowd was absolutely still. You came here for a show, Ace continued. Fire and rockets and makeup. That's fine. That's what we do. But underneath all of this, he gestured vaguely at his costume, his makeup. There's just a guy who plays guitar. And sometimes that guy needs you to know that the guitar isn't just part of the production. He looked down at the instrument in his hand. A string broke. It happens. I could have grabbed another guitar. Finished the solo. Kept the show moving. But then you would have seen the Spaceman playing guitar. I wanted you to see me. Just for a minute. Playing with what I had. No tricks. No backup plan. Just this. He held up the guitar with its broken string. This is all I've ever been. Before the makeup. Before the character. Just a guy from the Bronx who learned to play guitar because it was the only thing that made sense. What followed silenced everyone in the room. Ace turned and walked back to his corner of the stage. He set his guitar down carefully on its stand, the broken guitar, the one he just used to play something honest. Then he looked at the sound tech in the wings and nodded. The tech brought out the backup guitar. Ace strapped it on, adjusted the tuning with quiet precision, and stepped back to his microphone. He looked at Gene, at Paul, at Peter. From the top, he said simply. The band started Shock Me, again. From the beginning. The rhythm section locked in. The stage lights came up. And when Ace's solo came, he played it, the full solo, the one the audience had paid to hear, with all the technique and flash and showmanship that had made him famous. But something was different. Everyone in the arena could feel it. The solo wasn't just spectacle anymore. It was backed by the 45 seconds of honest playing they'd just witnessed. The musicianship underneath the character. The real person behind the makeup. When the solo ended, when the final note rang out across Madison Square Garden, 12,000 people erupted. Not the polite applause of entertainment. The roaring, standing, screaming acknowledgement of witnessing something real. Ace didn't bow. Didn't wave. Didn't acknowledge the applause. He just turned back to his amplifier, adjusted a knob, and waited for the next song. The rest of the show continued normally. Fire and blood and theatrics. KISS being KISS. But everyone in that arena knew they'd seen something else. A moment when the spectacle stopped and the substance showed through. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. After the show, Ace found that broken guitar string on the stage floor where he dropped it. He picked it up, coiled it carefully, and put it in his guitar case. For the next 15 years, through leaving KISS, through solo albums, through comebacks and reunions, Ace kept that string. He never threw it away. Never replaced it with a good one. He just kept it, coiled in the bottom of his guitar case, a reminder of the night he chose to let the silence stay. Years later, a young guitarist asked Ace about that night. Why did you stop playing? Why didn't you just grab the backup guitar? Ace thought for a moment. Because sometimes, he said quietly, the most important thing you can play is nothing. Let people hear the silence. Let them understand what's missing. Then when you play again, they know it matters. The broken string still sits in Ace's guitar case. He's never thrown it away. That night at Madison Square Garden changed how people saw Ace Frehley. Not as the Spaceman. Not as a character in makeup. As a guitar player who understood that real power doesn't come from spectacle. It comes from knowing when to stop. And when to play.